So now that we're done with the youngest of the party, we can move on to the oldest. What are our goals for Gandalf? There's really three stages to the Gandalf that we know. First, he's an entertainer, dancing at Bilbo's birthday, setting off magical fireworks, just there to have a good time and bring joy. Next, we see him as Gandalf the Grey, the wise wanderer who roams where he's needed, bringing counsel and sometimes getting in over his head. And finally, we see him reborn as Gandalf the White, sent back to Middle-earth with divine power and a task to complete. We'll do a point buy for Gandalf. Multiclassing minimums are all of our mental stats: intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, starting off with a 12 in strength. Gandalf can throw down with his staff and his sword, but he is still an old man, so dexterity's 10 and constitution is 11. Intelligence is 13, he's a smart guy and he knows a lot, but he's not above seeking help or looking things up. We'll put a 15 in wisdom. Gandalf is a wizard in the more literal sense, in that he is someone who is wise, so this needs to be high by definition. And we'll finish off with a 12 in charisma. He can offer counsel and try to convince you, but ultimately it's up to those that he counsels to take his advice. Gandalf is a Maya, a sort of primordial angel-like spirit, so we'll make him an Aasimar. We get +2 to our charisma and +1 to our constitution, making them 14 and 12 respectively. We have 60 feet of dark vision, and can cast light for those in our party without it. Once per day, we can touch a creature as an action, roll a number of d4s equal to our proficiency bonus, and heal them for that amount. And we have resistance to necrotic and radiant damage. Starting at 3rd level, we can reveal our full celestial glory as a bonus action once per day. We shed bright light within 10 feet, and dim light for another 10 for up to a minute. At the end of each of our turns, every creature within 10 feet of us takes radiant damage equal to our proficiency bonus. And once per turn, if we damage a creature with an attack or spell, we can deal additional radiant damage equal to our proficiency. Gandalf's whole deal is being the guy who knows a lot and can give you advice, so we'll make him a sage. We get proficiency in history and arcana, and as a researcher, we know where we can find information that we don't have. Now, Gandalf presumably makes his own fireworks, so we'll start off as an artificer. We get proficiency with thieves' tools, tinker's tools, and alchemist supplies, as well as 2 skills from the artificer list, like investigation and perception. Artificers are magical tinkerers, so we can take an action to apply a minor magical effect to a tiny object. Stuff like making the thing glow, play a message, or emit a smell, just little sensory stuff. We also get spells. Dancing Lights throws up 4 floating lights, they can be all different colors, and Booming Blade adds thunder damage to our sword and sets up a trap, dealing additional thunder damage if the creature we hit moves at least 5 feet before our next turn. Then Fairy Fire surrounds enemies in colored smoke and sparkles if they fail a dexterity save, preventing them from becoming invisible and giving attacks against them advantage. At 2nd level, we get infusions, magic items that we can make every day. We know 4 infusions, but we can only have 2 active at a time. The Pipe of Smoke Monsters is a place for our Longbottom Leaf, letting us exhale smoke that takes the form of a creature, but is small enough to fit in a 1-foot cube and dissipates shortly. The Wand of Pyrotechnics has 7 charges that we can spend as an action to produce a burst of sound and sparkling light at a point within 60 feet. It does regain some expended charges at dawn, but we can also just remake the infusion to make a fully charged one. Once we get out of the Shire, we can switch over to our other 2, the Enhanced Weapon and Enhanced Arcane Focus, enchanting Glamdring and our staff to add +1 to their attack rolls. Switching gears to Bard for a bit, we get proficiency in any skill, like Performance, to put on a great fireworks show. As a Bard, we get Bardic Inspiration, a pool of d6s to hand out to the Fellowship. We get a number of them equal to our Charisma modifier, and they refill on a long rest. We can hand them out with our bonus action, and whoever we give one to can add it to an attack, ability check, or save in the next 10 minutes. For Bard spells, Minor Illusion can make an illusion, either visible or audible, so we can keep those trolls fighting amongst themselves. And Thunderclap deals thunder damage to every creature adjacent to us who fails a Constitution save. Bards get some nice utility spells like Detect Magic, Comprehend Languages, and Identify, and we can use Thunder Wave to blast a 15-foot cube with sound, dealing thunder damage and pushing creatures back 10 feet if they fail a Constitution save. 2nd level Bards are Jacks of all trades, letting us add half our proficiency bonus to any checks we make that don't include the whole thing, to make us a little better at the things we aren't good at. Song of Rest lets us add a d6 to any healing our party gets from spending hit dice on a short rest, and Color Spray unleashes a huge flash that blinds weak enemies in a 15-foot cone. 3rd level Bards get Expertise, so we'll upgrade our History and Persuasion proficiencies. Now if you're thinking, wait, I've been keeping track, and he doesn't have Persuasion proficiency, then good news. College of Lore Bards get 3 skills for free, like Intimidation, Insight, and Persuasion. And we have quite the way with words, as our cutting words can demoralize a creature, spending a Bardic Inspiration die as a reaction to reduce their attack roll or ability check by the amount rolled. Our spell at this level is Animal Messenger. We take a tiny beast, like, say, a moth, and give it a 25-word message to deliver to someone who matches the description we give. so we can call the Eagles to help us escape from Orthanc. Our first ASI will round off our Intelligence and Wisdom to 14 and 16 respectively. We'll grab Prestidigitation for miscellaneous minor magics, and Heat Metal, a nasty little spell with uses ranging from making people drop their weapons to cooking them alive in their plate armor. 5th level upgrades our Bardic Inspiration by making the dice into d8s and refilling them on every rest, not just long ones. Then Pyrotechnics turns an ordinary patch of fire into either a dazzling fireworks display that briefly blinds enemies, or a thick cloud of smoke that, well, actually also blinds enemies, but, differently. At 6th level, we become a calming presence in the Fellowship, as Counter Charm lets us use an action to give our friends advantage on saves against charming and frightening. Then we'll grab Tongues, since Gandalf is multiple thousands of years old and can read and speak most languages. Lore Bards also get 2 additional magical secrets, spells from any list that count as Bard spells for us. First, Shield is a good all-purpose AC boost to use against Balrog swords and Saruman's firebolts alike, and Find Seed can summon our friend Shadowfax, the Lord of all horses, to bear us in and out of danger. But we're Gandalf the White for the better part of 2 movies, so let's get on with it and switch over to Cleric. And since Gandalf is a servant of the Secret Fire, we'll go with the Zeal domain. That'll give us proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor, so we can actually wield Glamdring. As a Priest of Zeal, we can make an attack with our bonus action after taking the attack action a number of times per day equal to our Wisdom modifier. Gandalf isn't typically allowed to use his more powerful magic on ordinary, everyday enemies. They have to be a certain level of being, such as the Balrog or the Nazgul, so having a pseudo extra attack is nice. We'll take Sacred Flame, Guidance, and Resistance as our cantrips, then Shield of Faith and Protection from Evil and Good can keep those nastier enemies from hitting us. Our domain spells at this level are Searing Smite and Thunderous Smite, which add extra damage to a weapon attack, as well as imparting another effect. Searing Smite adds fire damage and ignites the target to deal more damage over time, and Thunderous Smite adds thunder damage, pushes the target back 10 feet, and knocks them prone if they fail a strength save. 2nd level clerics can channel their divinity once per rest. We can turn undead, warding off any Nazgul who get too close if they fail a wisdom save, or we can use Consuming Fervor when we deal fire or thunder damage to forego rolling and just deal max damage. Our next 2 domain spells are Magic Weapon and Shatter. Magic Weapon makes a weapon magical, as you might expect, blessing it and giving it a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls for up to an hour. Shatter deals thunder damage in a 10-foot radius sphere to anyone who fails a Constitution save, and if they're made of something like stone or crystal, they have disadvantage on the save. It also deals damage to objects, so we can use this to break stone or shatter wizard staffs. Thaumaturgy gives us a few more theatrical sensory effects, like making our voice boom 3 times louder so we can shock Bilbo into giving up the ring. And since we like to use our staff and sword at the same time, we'll need to pick up the dual wielder feat, since neither of them is light. That'll also let us draw them both at the same time and boost our AC by 1 while we're dual wielding. 5th level clerics can destroy any undead with CR 1/2 or lower who fail their save against our turn undead, and we get 3rd level spells. Remove Curse and Dispel Magic and undo Saruman's sinister workings, so we can draw him like poison from a wound. There's also Motivational Speech to shore up the courage of Gondor's defenders by giving them temporary HP and advantage on wisdom saves. And Daylight to bring a light to dark places. It lights up an enormous area, a 60-foot radius sphere of bright light and a further 60 feet of dim light, but even then I'm not sure it's quite big enough to light up all of the Dwerodelf. Our domain gives us Haste and Fireball at this level. Fireball is a little flashy and aggressive for Gandalf, but we can have Shadowfax show us the meaning of haste, which at least in D&D terms, means his speed is doubled, his AC and dex saves are boosted by 2, and he gets an extra attack each turn that he can use to attack, dash, disengage, hide, or use an object. We get a second use of our Channel Divinity per rest at 6th level, and as a Zeal Cleric, we get Resounding Strike. Whenever we deal thunder damage to a large or smaller creature, we can also push it 10 feet away. Our domain spells are Freedom of Movement and Fire Shield. Freedom of Movement lets us ignore difficult terrain, prevents us from being paralyzed, restrained, or having our speed reduced, and lets us escape from non-magical restraints. And Fire Shield surrounds us in Holy Fire, giving us resistance to cold damage and dealing 2d6 fire damage to anyone who hits us with a melee attack. Now normally we'd be able to choose between a Warm Shield and a Chill Shield, which, does the inverse, but the domain specifies that we can only do the Warm Shield. At 8th level, our Turn Undead automatically destroys undead up to CR 1, our Strength goes up to 14, and our attacks are blessed. Once per turn, when we deal damage to a creature with a weapon attack or a cantrip, we can deal an extra 1d8 radiant damage. Our 5th level domain spells, Destructive Wave and Flame Strike, are big flashy AoEs that don't fit Gandalf at all, so we're just going to ignore them. We can take Dawn for a similar effect that is in character, summoning a 30-foot radius cylinder of sunlight that deals radiant damage to anyone in it when it appears and anyone who ends their turn in it. There's also Legend Lore. which gives us information about the history that turned into legend, and possibly even the legends that faded into myth. Though maybe not, it's not called myth lore. Then Dispel Good and Evil is pretty much word for word what we did against the Balrog. A shimmering shield of light that gives Celestials, Fae, Fiends, Elementals, and Undead disadvantage on attacks against us, and as an action we can attack one such creature and attempt to banish it back to its home plane. We can also touch a creature like Theoden, who's charmed, frightened, or possessed by one of those creatures, and end that effect. At 10th level we get Word of Radiance, a cantrip that lets off a flash, dealing radiant damage to creatures within 5 feet of us. And we can directly petition our deity for aid with Divine Intervention. Once per day we can ask for help as an action, and roll percentile dice. If the result is our cleric level or lower, our god responds, helps how the DM sees fit, and we can't ask again for another week. It's potentially very powerful, but if you really think about it, isn't Gandalf himself the result of Divine Intervention? We can destroy undead up to CR2 at 11th level, not up to Nazgul levels, but that was never going to happen. True Seeing lets us see things as they truly are by giving us True Sight for an hour, and for something we can use on the Nazgul, Sunbeam summons a mote of light that we can fire a beam of light from every turn with our action, dealing radiant damage and blinding any creatures in the beam who fail their Constitution saves. Our capstone is a 12th level of Cleric for one last ability score improvement, and will bump our Wisdom up to 18. Now that the build is complete, let's take a look and see what we have done. Gandalf is kind of a mixed bag. He's got the most versatility of any of the Fellowship with his huge array of spells. He can wade into combat with his sword and staff, he can create distractions and debuff enemies, he can heal or drop big AoEs on groups of enemies, but in classic D&D wizard fashion, he's also the squishiest of the bunch. Sam is the only one with worse AC, and he has way more HP and better saving throws than Gandalf. That's really it in a nutshell. Gandalf's biggest advantage is that he can do practically anything the party needs, up to and including asking a god for direct intervention. But he's also an old man who has died once before, and he can do it again far easier than any of the others.
It's a pity Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance.
Pity? It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them, Frodo? Do not be too eager to deal out death and judgment. Even the very wise cannot see all ends.